So, these events that keep coming up, instead of just reacting, dealing with them one at a time and being shocked each time we have another event that surfaces that is brought to our attention, we need to function from the position of an analysis that clarifies we are in a total system structure of racism, white supremacy, and that is why we are seeing the kinds of behaviors from individuals, be it Donald Sterling or be it George Zimmerman or any of the other cases that come to our attention. There is a reason that these cases exist. And I want to also talk about, in this case, they talked about mental health, but also gun control. And we have to begin to understand, I say you can't understand the gun mania if you don't understand racism, white supremacy. The gun is the answer to conscious and or subconscious, the answer, the response to the white collective feeling they can be genetically annihilated by black genetic material. And the gun is a great equalizer. I encourage everybody to get a copy of the ISIS papers and read.
10 people dead, 3 wounded, victims of a white man who opened fire in a Buffalo supermarket yesterday afternoon. 11 of the victims were black, and officials said the gunman was motivated by racism. He's been charged with first-degree murder. New York Governor Kathy Hochul is vowing for swift justice in this case, and she joins us now. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
What is the latest you can tell us about this investigation?
Well, the investigation is unfolding, but in the next hour or so, we'll be releasing the names of all the victims that have been identified and families notified. It was an excruciatingly painful process. This person traveled over 3 hours with the intention of inflicting maximum damage, mass casualties on a community that was targeted by zip code as having the highest black population within a 3-hour range of the individual's home along the southern tier in Buffalo near the Pennsylvania border. So this is shocking on so many levels, but the intentionality that this was not a random act whatsoever. He calculated this. It was cold, it was calculating, and it was cruel in its effect. And so more information is coming out about the manifesto, where he was radicalized, absolutely on social media platforms. And we're also watching to make sure that the leaders of these social media companies are going to take responsibility and do much, much more to do monitoring themselves of content that is placed on their platforms before it is spread. This is an act of white supremacy, terrorism, and racism.
Erie County District Attorney John Flynn says he has evidence that may lead to a terrorism charge. So is that something you would support?
Absolutely, and if not at the local level and under state laws, when we believe it'll violate state laws, there are federal laws that would consider this, that treat this as domestic terrorism, that even have stricter penalties. So there may be a dual approach to this. So the district attorney was first, but also the U.S. Attorney's Office is very involved as well.
So you're calling for social media companies to do more to curb racist content on their platforms. Like, what do you want them to do?
I want them to have a trigger system, excuse the word trigger, but the system that would immediately alert individuals when racist content or any manifesto type materials that shows a propensity or desire to harm others, to kill them, to maim them, to have mass casualties. This was all telegraphed. It was written out in a manifesto that was published on social media platforms. The information was there. They need to have algorithms in place that'll identify very quickly the second information is posted, so it can be tracked down by proper law enforcement authorities. They have the resources to do this. They need to take ownership of this, because otherwise this virus will continue to spread, and there are copycat individuals who have seen what happened in New Zealand and in other cases where there's been racially motivated attacks on individuals, whether it's a synagogue in Pittsburgh, it's a grocery store in El Paso, or it's a church in Charleston, South Carolina. And Buffalo is just the next on a list. So this is not the first, but it is our strong and fervent desire that this be the last.
So there is obviously now talk about stronger gun control in the country. Buffalo Mayor Brown says he wants to see stronger gun control. What can the state of New York do to try to, stop these shootings or prevent these shootings and do more gun control?
New York State already has some of the toughest gun laws on the books in the nation. But what happened here is deeply concerning and calls out for a national response. The individual is able to buy an AR-15 in the state of New York legally, but that did not have the capacity to wreak the massacre that resulted here. What happened was this individual was able to go to another state, possibly Pennsylvania, which is literally 10 minutes from the border from where he lives, and acquire a high-capacity magazine that allows 30 shots per round and have that added. So that's not legal in New York. But I'm going to continue looking at our gun laws. We're making some announcements on loopholes we found in a press conference on Tuesday.
That's New York Governor Kathy Hochul. Thank you for talking with us today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
It started as a normal, busy Saturday at the Tops Friendly Market in Buffalo, New York. People doing their weekly grocery shopping or picking up food for Sunday dinner until around 2:30 when a white gunman dressed in tactical gear opened fire, first in the parking lot and then inside the store. 10 people died, 3 were wounded. Of the victims, 11 were black. Officials say the crime was motivated by racism. Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown told NPR that one of the victims was a retired police officer, Aaron Salter, who was working as a security guard in the supermarket. The mayor said Salter confronted the gunman and fired at him to protect shoppers, but the shooter was protected by his body armor and instead killed Salter. The mayor called the security guard a hero. Mayor Brown also said that another victim was the mother of the city's retired fire commissioner, Garnell Whitfield. The Buffalo News reported that Whitfield called his mother God-loving and a mother to the motherless. The news outlet also identified Catherine Massey as one of the dead. Massey's sister called her a beautiful soul. Mayor Brown said there will be a memorial service held for the victims today and that grief counselors would be provided to help families get through this difficult time. Stay tuned to NPR News and NPR.org throughout the day as we learn more about the victims and for the latest updates on the investigation in Buffalo.
Context of White Supremacy. Gus T. Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the system of white supremacy. Today's date, Sunday, May 15, 2022. So I have been told. Marking time. Events are still unfolding in Buffalo, New York. Payton Gendron Jr., 18-year-old white race soldier. Talked about some of this briefly yesterday. I said yesterday on the compensatory call-in, hey, all of these events are unfolding. It was literally minutes, a few hours before we went live yesterday when all of this had taken place. And hey, it's really only been about 24 hours, so events are still unfolding. Information is still being released, but wow, at least, the minimum that seems to be confirmed at this point with the 10 fatalities, 13 people shot, most of them black. 11 of the people that were shot were black. And all of this being done deliberately, saying that he planned all of this out. Mr. Gendron planned all of this out. I saw a number of different reports. One of them was Buffalo Public Radio, and they said this is their Emmett Till moment. I have no idea what that means. We talk about metaphors on the compensatory call-in every week, but I have no idea what this means. They could have said this is another Joseph Conrad moment. And we said, what? Who? What did he just say? Who's he talking about? What? That would have been, I think, more fitting, more accurate. We'll read the report and see, Joseph Gerald Christopher. Joseph Conrad is Heart of Darkness. That's why I did the slip. White supremacy literature on my mind. But Joseph Gerard Christopher. This is our Global Sunday Talk, but I mean, hey, this is being talked about all over the world right now, and it is 24 hours. But I mean, hey, Gus T with no budget, no staff, no helpers of any sort. Ignorant Gus T said, Buffalo, didn't they have something like this before in Buffalo, New York? I'm just going straight to the New York Times. This is May 16, 1981. The cows did not exist at that time. Oh my God. Let me give that date again. May 16, 1981. I guess I'm going to do, if this was basketball, I would do my follow through and just let the hand hang. And this is one I want you to think about this. So anybody here listening to this program in the archives, anywhere else, did you hear the name in what they've been talking about with this case? Have you heard the name Joseph Gerard Christopher? Because that should have immediately been mentioned with this case in Buffalo, and I mean immediately. But let me give the date again. This is just Gus T. Follow through and leave it. Black people all over the world despise Gus. Victims of racism despise Gus. Kool and the Gang. VGQ. VGQ. Joseph Gerard Christopher. So this is from the New York Times. That date, May 16, 1981. What did the New York Times say on that day? They said, gotta scroll. Here we go. Until a month ago, when he became a suspect in the slayings of black men in Buffalo and New York City, Joseph G. Christopher was unknown to the police, who were hunting for the killer or killers of 10 black men, a black teenager, and a dark-skinned Hispanic man in 4 cities last year. Last Monday, however, the 25-year-old Army private, who is white, stood in a Buffalo courtroom to plead not guilty to the shooting deaths of the black teenager and 2 of the black men in Buffalo last September. Despite the presence of 2 lawyers hired by his mother, Private Christopher said he would conduct his own defense. The private is also considered a prime suspect in the other murders in Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and Rochester, shout to the Rock, upstate New York, and is the subject of a grand jury inquiry into 4 stabbing deaths here last December 22nd, joined service last November. The indictment of Private Christopher, following his supposed admission to nurses at Fort Benning, Georgia, where he was recovering from a self-inflicted wound after allegedly trying to stab a black soldier to death, has shocked and mystified. I feel like I've heard those words the last 24 hours. Shocked and mystified the defendant's friends and neighbors in the Buffalo area where he lived until joining the service last November. The Joe Christopher I'm reading and hearing about is not the Joe Christopher I knew, remarked a female secretary who had been very close to the young man for 2 years in the late 1970s. The police, who reportedly found used cartridge casings in Private Christopher's Buffalo home, whose markings conclusively matched the markings on casings found at the scene of the shootings last September, have uncovered no motive for the murders, according to law enforcement sources, and the privates, blacks as well as whites, said in interviews that he had never showed any racial hostility. Most of the friends, who have also been questioned by the police, requested anonymity to avoid public association with the case. Private Christopher's family declined to be interviewed. Joe worked with blacks. He knew them, and he didn't have any prejudice against them, said a white friend who was in the home improvement business with Mr. Christopher in the mid-1970s and who saw him as recently as last December when the private was home on furlough. He just didn't talk about blacks. The friend added, he might have made a passing remark, but nothing more than I or many other people would have made. No strong feelings about race. Ernest Smith, who is black, recalled that he worked as a maintenance man with Mr. Christopher and socialized with him in 1978 and 1979. Joe once said that he had been ripped off by some blacks when he was a boy. Mr. Smith said, but that's about all he ever said about blacks. He didn't seem to have any strong feelings about race. If he did these killings, something has to have come over him lately. That's what they said about Gendron. To some of his friends, Joe Christopher was a considerate, gregarious person who loved to fish and hunt and shoot pool and take photographs, a high school dropout. Mark Furman, a high school dropout who led a rather mundane life in Buffalo's working-class neighborhoods, a man who was adept with his hands, eager to help others, and slow to anger. To other friends and acquaintances, he exhibited a more competitive side, a more brooding nature, and a marked distaste for being ridiculed or put down. But none of his friends or neighbors or former teachers and employers said they saw anything in his habits or character that may have drawn him toward violence. Joe wasn't a fighter. The most he did was yell, said one of Private Christopher's best friends. But anything's possible, and maybe the police have an ace up their sleeve. All it looks like so far is a lot of coincidences. Mr. Christopher was born in Buffalo on July 26, 1955, and raised in a predominantly Italian East Side neighborhood that in recent years has become increasingly populated by blacks. Ooh, so similar. His father, Nicholas, the son of Italian immigrants, was a maintenance worker with the city sanitation department before his death in 1976. His mother, Therese Hurley Christopher, is a registered nurse at Deaconess Hospital. The defendant has 3 sisters, 2 of whom are older than he. The eldest sister is married. As a youngster, Joe helped build a 3-room cabin of plywood and tar paper on a plot of land his father bought in Ellington, New York, 40 miles southwest of Buffalo, in Chautauqua County. Nicholas Christopher, whom Joe evidently adored, was an outdoorsman and hunter who taught his son how to shoot and handle weapons. Joe himself acquired a passion for the outdoors that, according to his friends, surpassed all his other interests. After attending parish classes at St. Lawrence Roman Catholic Church in Buffalo, where his mother still sings in the choir, Joe was enrolled in the public schools and in 1971 entered the automotive mechanics program at Burgard Vocational High School. He is remembered there as a quiet, unassuming student who did extremely well in his shop courses before dropping out in early 1974 after he failed English and science. I don't know. He did extremely well in shop so he could make like a bird bath, but he couldn't even he failed English and science. And then he failed English and science. Joe was very intelligent, though he wasn't book smart, said the secretary, who is 9 years older than he. I mean, they wouldn't say Gus T is very intelligent, and I have a college degree. This fella is a college dropout, and he's very intelligent. Meanwhile, I'm a worthless coon from Virginia. Only reason I'm reading this is because they go into some of the more details about what Mr. Christopher, membership in the National Rifles, let me see if I can give you a little bit more of the importance of why is this so important. Let me see. This is such an important case. I only vaguely remembered some of the details. I hate reading anything from the New York Post. I was trying to go to the New York Times instead. I'm just going back so you can get some of the details as to why this case is so important before we proceed. Oh my God. So the New York Post, their report, the serial killer left a trail of dead black men from Buffalo to New York City. He didn't immediately realize that he was bleeding. Several moments passed from when the man struck 25-year-old John Adams in the chest until Adams fell to the ground. His attacker, a white man wearing wire-rimmed glasses, hopped on a 2 train. It was almost noon on Monday, December 22nd, at the IRT station on 14th Street and 7th Avenue. A couple hours after Adams was stabbed, a man named Ivan Frazier rode the E train from Queens. When the train stopped at 53rd Street Station, a passenger got up and took a swipe at Frazier, who caught the blow and threw the man against the door. They both got off the train, and Frazier yelled at the man, who pulled a knife from his pocket. People on the platform fled. Frazier ran too when he noticed the blood dripping from his hand. 2 hours later, 19-year-old Luis Rodriguez was accosted by the man with wire-rimmed glasses on Madison between 40th and 41st. After a brief altercation during which Rodriguez's wallet was taken, the man stabbed the teen in the chest. Rodriguez was taken to a hospital, but doctors could not save him. The year 1980 was a banner year for evil in New York City. They're saying that now. It had more reported murders, robberies, thefts, and other crimes than any year since such records had been kept. It was the year John Lennon was shot to death outside the Dakota. But the Christmas time stabbings were shocking even for New York City, and for that year, a 12-hour spree that left 4 men dead and 2 wounded. They were all the work of an assailant the press dubbed the Midtown Slasher. Let's see. Then they give me more details about the Buffalo. There's a book. We might have switched our book. Let's see. Where is the portion? Because they get very specific about the racial component. Let's see. At any rate, Mr. Joseph Christopher, not to take up the whole time, he killed these black males. Specifically, they used the word terrorize in the report. And they even some folks did eventually step forward and say, oh man, he did make statements about not liking niggers specifically. That's why I was trying. Believe me, I'm not wasting time and just, trying to read you all illiterate. The reason I was trying to catch back up to see where they get to the details about some of these killings and why this case should have immediately been mentioned when they want to talk about Payton Gendron Jr. and what happened just hours ago. So this is the Buffalo News, which their whole front page is Payton Gendron, but they also talked about this case. So they write, Joseph G. Christopher, the former Army private who terrorized Western New York as the .22 caliber killer in the early 1980s, has died of cancer in prison at the age of 35. Christopher claimed in a 1983 prison interview with the Buffalo News that he killed 13 black males. He died at 3 p.m. Monday in Great Meadow Correctional Facility at Comstock near Glens Falls, said Superintendent Arthur Leonardo. It was definitely natural causes, Leonardo said. It was nothing that anybody did to him. He was here for several months. Most of the times he'd been here, he'd been a very sick individual. Christopher, who had become obese in prison, was considered such a risk because of his racial hate crimes that he was confined by himself in protective custody during his nearly 13 years in jail. At the time of his death, Christopher was serving a combined term of 58 years to life for the murder of 3 black males in Buffalo, plus the murder and attempted murder of 2 black males in Manhattan. Authorities also believe he killed a black male in Niagara Falls, but he never was prosecuted because of the lengthy sentences he received in the other cases. In the prison interview, The News, Christopher did not deny involvement in the killings of 2 Buffalo cab drivers whose hearts were cut out. That was why I remembered this case. Like, didn't they have a white man who was cutting out black people's hearts all those years ago? It just had to get back to getting all the details right, not trying to waste time at all. Continuing. Christopher did not deny involvement in the killings of 2 Buffalo cab drivers whose hearts were cut out, but authorities were divided on whether he was responsible for those killings, and he was never charged. Christopher, a slight, scholarly-looking type, he's a high school dropout who failed English. What are you talking about? A slight, scholarly-looking type who wore constant grin on his first trial. His initial convictions were later overturned on insanity grounds. Grew up on Weber Street in Buffalo. He dropped out of Burgard Vocational High School in his junior year and later enlisted in the Army. I think I can stop there. They do give the names. I guess I should name these victims. Sorry, I'll do that. Christopher was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia during the fall of 1980. The wave of shootings began on September 24, 1980, and during the next 26 hours, 3 Buffalo blacks, Glenn Dunn, 14, Glenn Dunn, 14, Harold Green, 32, and Emmanuel Thomas, 30, were shot to death by a white man wielding a .32 caliber rifle. The following day in Niagara Falls, Joseph L. McCoy, 43, was shot to death. Again, a case of a black male shot by a white man with a .22 caliber weapon. As homicide detectives desperately searched for leads and blacks started carrying weapons for protection, police on October 8 and 9 discovered the grisly remains of 2 cab drivers, Parler Edwards, 71, and Ernest Jones, 40, their hearts ripped from their bodies. Buffalo suddenly gained unwanted national attention, and after Carl Hand, a racist white supremacist, announced plans for a rally, a crowd of 5,000 people gathered on the steps of City Hall for a Unity Day rally decrying racism and the killings. But the attacks continued. That's where I was. Oh, they got. I can't even get all the victims. I can't even read all the victims. I have to get the rest of the victims in later. That's why I was stopped at. That right there. Now, unless everybody said, hey, we already heard all this, Gus. We already knew this. We don't need you coming in here being some remedial or what have you. Johnny come lately. We already knew this. Cool and the gang. I hadn't seen any of this talked about. And really, I hadn't heard this case talked about a lot. It just happened to be that I remember studying this from way, and I mean like years ago, like when the cows first started, but I mean, wow, this should be numbered like immediately. Joseph G. Christopher, remember this? This is not Buffalo's Emmett Till moment. We can just go back to right here. Chopping out hearts, 14-year-old black child. All of that right there is why I'm totally cool. We are white guests only on the Context of White Supremacy. I have 13 years of talking about and trying to reveal constructive information about white supremacy, racism, non-white people, victims of racism all over the planet. Despise Gus T. And that is totally fine. I did not get in this to seek out non-white people to speak to, but I'm not interested in sending out invites and asking for victims of racism to join and participate and discuss with us. And I don't want to talk to that nigger. He's crazy. Cool in the gang. White guests only, which would also mean Global Sunday Talk on Racism might not be happening because Gus is not going to be jumping up and down and begging non-white people anywhere in the known universe to come talk about racism if that's not really a priority. That's just not in my skill set, my wheelhouse in terms of being a victim of racism who other non-white people want to talk to. That has never been Gus T. Somebody who's good at that should do that. But white guests only. We will have to see if non-white people in other parts of the world are interested in participating. We'll see. But Gus T is really bad at being able to get victims to chime in and share a word. Oh, well, Gus did know about Joseph G. Christopher in Buffalo, and I think that is super extraordinarily relevant to what is happening right now. And in fact, if I find a book about this case between now and Thursday, we will not be reading All God's Children in the book club. We will be reading about Joseph G. Christopher chopping hearts out of black men. Now that is some black male privilege for you. Anywho, our Global Sunday Talk for today, we did have Andrew with us. And I mean, wow, this one is way different in terms of the Global Sunday Talk for bunches of reasons because of what happened in Buffalo. Like, man, that was front page on the BBC, Al Jazeera, France 24, everything. It would have been great. I wish I was super cool amongst the black people, victims of racism, to hear what non-white people all over the world thought about this incident. But Andrew was the only one who was able to make time, willing to come in and chat it up with us. Andrew, are you with us, sir?
Hi, Gus. Yeah, glad to be here as always.
For sure. Good to hear from you. I do not know if you have paid attention to what has been happening in Buffalo, if you've heard any information about that or what have you, but I mean, that is number one. It seems all over the world, 10 fatalities and 13 people shot, most of them black. Did you see any of this information, Payton, Gendron, or is this the first time you're hearing about all this today?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it was on BBC News and Al Jazeera. I'm sure it was. But, you see, the problem is, right, I mean, I heard about it on CNN, right? So, you see, I'm not sure that, I mean, maybe I'm just not watching enough news in this country, but I don't think they report what happens to black people on the BBC, because obviously, like all countries, we get news on the hour, every hour, 24 hours a day via the BBC and ITV on free TV. Do you know what I mean? It's not pay-per-view TV. This is free TV. So what I saw was coverage on CNN. I mean, maybe I'm not watching enough terrestrial news in the UK, but I'm still going to bet. I'm that I'm sure they would have covered it, but I don't think they covered it extensively on terrestrial news. I don't think they did. I'm pretty sure they would have covered it. However, I'm gonna watch the news tonight and see what they do with that story, if anything. But I've been in front of the TV for half the day today, and albeit maybe I'm not watching the news, as in UK news enough, but I'd love to know if what you're getting in the States is exactly what we're getting here in terms of the news. I'm going to guess that I'm going to guess that it's not. Actually, I'm going to make a big guess that it's not.
I would hope that we have, phenomenally more comprehensive, more detailed coverage here in the States. I mean, Buffalo is right here. Like, I could have, I don't know if I'd have been there. I could have flown, put it there. I could have flown there, driving. It would have taken, if we had left immediately when this shooting happened, we could have been about halfway. We could have been at Chicago by now. We'd be somewhere around there, but we still have probably another good day of driving. So it is far, but I mean, we do have listeners in the New York area and stuff like that. So I mean, we should have extraordinary coverage in comparison to you guys, but I guess the news that you've seen over the past 24 hours, did they have anything about the abortion and the protests that were happening here?
I saw a little bit of that on CNN, I think. Okay. That's what I saw there. And again, going back to the shooting, I just found that quite interesting because this white chap decides to go and, what did he do? He streamed it. What I got is that he streamed it live, and so obviously premeditated and planned. And then he emptied a whole heap of bullets into a whole heap of black people, and it seemed like he was going to shoot himself because this report that I saw on CNN said that he put the gun up to his chin, and they were interviewing an African American man as well. So that was his eyeball account. He put the gun up to his chin, and then he decided obviously not to kill himself. You know, which I just thought, so why don't you just shoot yourself there? Why don't you just kill yourself, right? And I thought to myself, you know, I was talking about it with my wife, and you know, all we could come to was this man thought that it would be better for him, he would get decent treatment by the police. For him not to just end his own life, instead what did he do? He knelt down, put his hands behind his back, and just remained like that. So why didn't the police go and shoot him? You know, why didn't the police blow him away? Why? You know what I mean? So that's the thing that I thought about. This racist, right, knew, in my opinion, that he would get decent treatment from them. He didn't even have to do that, you know? Why didn't they pump some bullets into him as a terrorist? Why? You know, so that's the bit, as far as I'm concerned. They should have just blown him away like they would have done any other non-white person, you know. What other conclusion can you come to? I can't see any other conclusion other than that. He knew he was going to get decent treatment, relatively decent treatment. Why else would not have gone through with it and blown himself away? Why? You know? Terrible.
Context of white supremacy. Now, you know, Andrew, now, hey, this is a young white man. He's not even 20. We are not blowing away some white man just because he shot a few niggers who were going to, you know, go spend their EBT and food stamp coupons to get Cheetos and, you know, whatever else at the grocery. Now, come on, you know, he can be reformed and get everything together. Well, folks, we have a new book for the book club. So what we will be reading Thursday is going to be Absolute Madness, a true story of a serial killer, race, and a city divided, all about Buffalo. Christopher, or Mr. Joseph Christopher. That is what we will be reading starting Thursday. I love it when I get a catch in between. We were going to read All God's Children, which would have been totally fine. Really the same book, but I mean, hey, we can go right to Buffalo. And again, this should be talked about like, hey, we don't have to talk about goofy Emmett Till. I'm sorry. My apologies. Not Goofy by any stretch. We do not have to reference Emmett Till. This is not our Emmett Till moment in Buffalo. Wasn't there a white man who was chopping out black male hearts? We didn't even get a prosecution on that. That stood out to me like, dang, you can't even get a prosecution? You got so many bodies, we can't even prosecute them all. Like, 5 niggers, 8 niggers, 10 niggers. And he lists some of the exact same. Come on. New book for Thursday, Absolute Madness, a true story of a serial killer, race, it doesn't say racism, race, and a city divided. Now, one of the things, because this says race, not racism, one of the things that I was curious about, you heard in the audio we started the broadcast with, and since this is more of a discussion about the Buffalo incident and what have you, you've had 24 hours to kind of look at some of the information. Folks who are with us, if you have commentary to share, 720-716-7300, the code 564-943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. See, we have New York listeners there, so they should be super informed, even though New York City is not quite, Buffalo. But that was one of the things that I wanted to ask Andrew and all the other folks around the world, if we could have got them for today. Like, what is the language being used to describe this? Now, Andrew cheated. He said he's been watching CNN, so he's been getting, our news content. But I mean, just from what you have seen, how have they been describing this incident? Are they saying that this is racism? Are they saying that this is race? Are they saying this is prejudice? Are they saying terrorism? That's a big one. What sort of language have you seen them use to describe this incident?
So they're not using the word terrorist that I've seen. They're not using the word racist. They've got and I did pay attention to that. They're saying something else. They didn't use the word terrorist. They didn't use the word racist. They said something else. It's another phrase that they use, and I can't remember. I'm sure. You know what? After this, I'm going to go back onto CNN and see what phrase they're using. But they didn't use any of those. you know, from what I saw, they didn't use. I think they said racially motivated. I think they said that. I hope I'm not getting it mixed up with something else. I'm sure I'm not. I think they said racially motivated attack or something like that, but they didn't say racist attack. But I suppose, I mean, is it the same? Is a racist attack in the eyes of the news, you know, which is controlled by white people? When they say a racist attack, is that the same as saying a racially motivated attack, or is that some coded language? Is that some legal loophole term? I'm not sure, because I've learnt in the last year or so that there's verbology used in law that allows you escape, allows you to escape. So words mean something. I mean, we know words mean something. Neely Fuller tells us words means something. Do you know what I mean? So, especially in the eyes of the law and so on and so forth. So I didn't hear them say racist attack. I didn't hear them say that, you know, but I will go and have a look at that. I mean, it'd be great. It'd be brilliant to discuss these, you know, words with a lawyer, so that we're clear, because prosecutions happen on words, or don't happen on what words you use, you know. So it's important, but I don't remember them saying racist attack or terrorist attack. I don't remember them using those two words. It's almost like, well, clearly they stopped short of using specific words, don't they? Because the words mean something, you know. But then they leave it to the victims of these crimes to push and the weight of public opinion to drive towards labeling certain acts of this type of racist behavior, you know, labeling that as terrorist crime or racist crime. It's left to the victims, and then they seem to, the judicial system in America and in all white countries seems to have to be pushed to use certain words to describe, you know, particular crimes. You know, that seems to be again where we are with this.
Super important. I know Vegan RD, she's in the New York area. She sent me the report yesterday where the white woman, governor of New York State, Kathy Hochul, she referred to this as racist. Oh, she was in the audio. That was her. She was talking today. So she did a press conference yesterday evening, and then they were talking to her, doing interviews today. She referred to this as an act of racism, white supremacy, and terrorism. That was her in the audio segment where they asked her if she would pursue terrorism charges, and she said absolutely. Not at the state level, federal level, both. And that is rare, because I don't even remember with Dylan Storm Roof, I don't think he was called a terrorist, and he wasn't charged as a terrorist either, or hate crime. Not that, you know, that matters, but I thought that was extremely... I'm sorry?
No, Gus, sorry. So I'm just putting my memory cap on now, because I've just been looking at buying a camera. I've just paid for it just now. Sorry, rewind. There's been loads of on the UK TV and what I've watched in the States and on YouTube. You call it Roe versus Wade. That's what you're referring to, right?
Oh, the abortion, yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry. Now, here's the thing again, and I know and I know this racist terrorist has only just been. I know that's if you like a more recent thing in the States. I totally understand that. But I've got to compare the coverage between the two from what I've seen. There's been loads of coverage on the news. You can't miss the Roe versus Wade thing, right? Effectively feminists coming out in droves and going bonkers, right? Which is basically what, that's, there's been loads of that on the UK TV, all over YouTube, all over every news thing that's, that's pushed into your ear holes in the UK, right? Compared to this racist going out and shooting people, right? There's been very little of that. So for me now, in my little brain, I'm asking why. Why is it Roe versus Wade has already received, and it's not just a distant, how long it's been, since, because obviously that's the last few days, isn't it? That's about about a week, right? I get it. But almost immediately, there was loads on that in the UK. almost immediately. You couldn't move, right? It's been in the newspapers as well, right? Roe versus Wade, right? And it doesn't have nothing to do with the UK necessarily, right? But yet regarding this, there's been, in comparison, there's clearly been very little. Why? That's my question. I think I know the answer, but I'll ask the question why anyway.
Context of White Supremacy. I thought that was super important. That is the next book. Like, it's no doubt. Unless somebody can find a better book on the Buffalo slings from the 1980s, Absolute Madness, a true story of a serial killer, race, and a city divided, by Catherine Polonero, Pelonero. I already have the book. I'm just trying to get the unabridged audio book. I'm just looking at some of the newspaper images that she has for the book. She has newspaper reports, I guess it would be, that have all these black people. Let's see. 2 black murder victims mutilated. Body in river tied to death of cab driver. All of this, black man, Buffalo, New York. Again, anybody that's on the line, have you heard this case mentioned? Because I mean, wow. Particularly, I was looking at Buffalo Public Radio, Buffalo News. Like I was saying, like, hey, I would expect folks across the pond and what have you to not have accurate information. Even me, I'm in Washington State. That's like it would take me days to drive to New York to Buffalo. Buffalo, they should have been the first ones. Joseph Christopher, we've seen this before. Especially once we see the victims. Now, did he go out and get black males at the grocery store? I know they mentioned the security guard, 30-year police veteran, but was he attacking black males at the Tops in Buffalo? Black male privilege. Absolute Madness, a true story of a serial killer, race, and a city divided. We have to see if we can get her on the program. My goodness. But that is the book. Thursday. There you go. I was looking forward to All God's Children, but wow, this is one to be bumped for. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up, if you have commentary to share, line should be open.
Can I be heard?
Can I be heard?
Oh, go ahead, ma'am.
Much obliged.
Thank you. So good afternoon to callers and stuff. As for the Roe versus, the abortion rights, abortion is the number one killer of black babies. So I'm sure they don't want to get rid of it. And then the other question I have for everyone is, should we have a code for when a white person enters into a black area that only black people reside in? Because that seems to be what's associated with a lot of these killings.
Interesting. We talked about that with Ma'afa 21. Now you want to talk about a reckless production of offspring. Oof, lots of reasons to have extensive dialogue before we get to the bedroom. I guess before we get to the code, because that is important, folks should be thinking about it, and particularly if there are going to be more of these type of incidents. Are you familiar? You're in the New York area. Are you familiar with Joseph G. Christopher? Do you remember all of this?
I never heard of it. I was born and raised in New York.
That is a failure of New York public, because I mean everybody, particularly right there in New York, like it's got to be tons of folks like, oh my God, we lived through all of this. Jesus, they said it was thousands of people that went out in Buffalo to protest racism and targeting black males, and everybody just got collective amnesia now, huh? Code for an area, at least my thoughts. It would be hard, right? And I'm also speaking as someone who lives in Seattle, so I'm not really in like an area with all black people at any time or what have you. They'd probably kick me out first. But it would be hard, Actually, let me rewind, because I did live in Atlanta, so I have been in environments like that. I remember at the comedy club, it would be hard for so many reasons, because Neely Fuller, he has at the beginning of the book, if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, how it works, everything else will confuse you. Like, ooh, so many black people, we're confused about racism, so we're not even thinking, we're not thinking like, oh, wow, they came to hang out with us, wonderful, joy. Oh, shut up, old angry racist Gusty, get your black behind out of here. Come in, joy. So it would certainly have to be united independent, and I'm not really in connection with these other folks because they might be confused or don't think this is a problem or what have you. So my individual code, I see someone coming, like, whoa, be alert, be mine. But I would have that about everybody, because it's just been so crazy. Like, I see tons of non-white people that are not courteous or helpful, not constructive in how we relate to other non-white people. So it would just be very alert. But if you see a white person, be on the lookout. How is this person dressed? Do they seem like they have a bulge in their pocket? I think some of the things that like law enforcement and what have you talk about, are they wearing like a big bulgy coat or what have you, where you could easily conceal a whole lot of things, even though, hey, it's spring, we're headed to summertime. Why do you need all that? Those type of things, just being really alert. But it would seem like it would have to be more of a united independent thing. Like, it certainly couldn't be a group thing in most settings because we're so confused. I know Sabrina Johnson, she's continuing the Welsing Institute. She's talked about, hey, just having a code for yourself, like your family. You go somewhere and you see someone, they begin with any sort of hostilities or what have you, exit. Because this could be the top situation in about 30 seconds. Exactly kind of what I've been saying for about the past 2 years. Like, no chatting it up and what are you doing? Who you talk to? What are you? None of that. Let's get out of here immediately. I would much rather be wrong and, it wasn't a big deal and whatever the case, and we can come back and get whatever we need from the store later, as opposed to, whoops, and now we're in the middle of, all of this. So, yeah, it would be very much about being alert, not having headphones and things like that on, maybe not being on the phone. I talk about that at the end of every program too, so that you can just be aware of things that are happening around you. And if you're in a location where hey, this is the black part of town, lots of black people here, let me be alert. Let me really be attention. Really, like I said, about everybody, particularly any individuals classified as white. What do they look like? What are they doing? What are they wearing? What's their demeanor? What are their nonverbals? Just be alert, and identify the exits and all of that. I also wouldn't want to be in any large crowds. Now, they were just at the grocery stores. No, that's not exactly it. But they were talking in Wisconsin, right, at the Bucks game on, was that Friday, my bad, where it was a shooting. Rob in California dialed in yesterday and told us about that. I think it was like 20 people got shot. So that would also be a part of it too. Like, anything where it's a lot of people, like, let's get out of here quick. Like, I don't want to hang out because it's just been so volatile particularly over the last 2 years. Those are kind of some of my thoughts. Does anybody have a code? Even vegan RD, if you vegan RD, if you have a code yourself in this, or anything that you tell your offspring. Any thoughts on having a code if you are in an environment where it's mostly black people, maybe all black people? What do you do? And even put this in context with the HBCUs, right? We talked about the Delaware State incident yesterday, so that's another one, right? A bunch of black people on a bus, basically, and then all the threats against the HBCUs. Do people have any sort of thoughts, codes? Like, whoa, maybe it is a little bit more dangerous in the current environment, current context with everything going on. Maybe it's a little bit more dangerous to be in an environment that's going to be exclusively or predominantly a lot of black people.
I don't go grocery shopping. I usually just order everything online. That's one thing. Another thing that I do is I avoid crowds. I don't do anything with a big crowd. I avoid it completely. But I don't have a particular code for when a white person that doesn't reside in the area is in an area that all black people reside. So that's why I ask.
Intelligent. I don't even do all that grocery shopping. I order my. Did you just start that with the pandemic, or have you been doing that for a while in terms of the grocery shop, or not grocery shopping, just having it delivered?
I started it with the pandemic, and then I continued it because of pregnancy and then like having small children. I just didn't want to go to the grocery store with small children.
What I've been saying, toughest job in the known universe, hands down. Attempted black parent system of white supremacy. Absolutely. Like Andrew's already talking about that, and Rachel in New York. I'm sure we had Henry in Chicago, parent as well. Yeah, I think what you just said, I think that's great, but in not being in large crowds, absolutely. Dr. Welsing talked about that repeatedly. But yeah, if it's in an area where you see someone, if you know there are other people there, if they have security, you can let them know, this person looks suspicious, maybe keep an eye out. That would be a good thing. If there are other people that you have rapport with, let them know so that they can also kind of have a heads up, be alert about what's happening. But so much of this comes down to, what is your understanding of white supremacy racism? What is your understanding of our level of risk? Because I know I personally, when I went out, I was not thinking about this. Even, with an incident like this, I still don't think I would have had that in mind. Like, whoa, like gotta be on Mr. Fuller said that some years ago. He said, man, when you go out, you have to be like a squirrel trying to cross a 6-lane highway. Like, whoa, it is dangerous. And I think for most of us, we just don't grasp that. So yeah, it would just be, no confrontations. Can't emphasize that. And regardless of what they're doing, I am not going and, what are you doing and blah, 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 and all of that. Exit. I have a description, so if you can get clothing and that sort of thing. So if you need to relay information to someone else, and trust that's the other thing I would say is trust your judgment. I know Dr. Cambon talked about that as well, in terms of if you get a vibe. Gavin DeBecker, The Gift of Fear. He talked about these type of situations specifically. He said, you go out and you see somebody, white person or non-white person, but you're in a predominantly black area and you see a white person and you get a feeling something is wrong. I don't quite know what it is, but just, something like his walk, his aura, something. Trust it. That's where I said I would much rather, I was wrong. He was just in a hurry. He got a parking ticket a little while ago, and, no big deal. I would much rather, I was wrong, err on the side of safety, as opposed to, because the system of white supremacy, we are conditioned to undermine our own judgment, to not listen to our own instincts, or even just signals from the creator, like, whoa, danger, danger. We suppress all of that. So listen, if you're getting a sense, if thought comes to like, whoa, what is she doing here? What is he doing? This white guy this is the black part of town with it. Take it. Especially if you are a parent and you have offspring there, take it and explain to them exactly why we're leaving abruptly. Yeah, I know you all want to do this and blah, 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 blah. Did you see what happened in Buffalo? Got to talk to your children about that. Mandatory. Got to talk to your children about that. Absolute. That is, I don't have any offspring, but you are in dereliction of your duty. I just read that report about the first time around they had an incident in Buffalo. It was a 14-year-old. You have to talk to them. Take your time. Write it down if you need to. If you need to call some other parents, you need to call us. We got parents right here. What did you tell your children? How did you tell them? But you have to talk to your children. It doesn't have to be an all-day thing and drown them in this so they're traumatized. But I mean, hey, we are in a traumatic, the governor of New York called this an act of terrorism. You got to talk to your children about all of this. That way, at least as a family, you can get your code together to how to respond to these sort of incidents if you're out in public. But tell your children the same thing, man. If you get a sense, what is going on here? Why is this guy here? What is he doing? Is he looking around? Have you seen him before? This guy doesn't even look familiar. Tell somebody, report, exit. And no verbal, I'm not challenging and blah, 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 and all I got to show how to, This person could be armed. even if I am armed. I don't know if he has an entourage. I don't know what type of weapon. He had body armor. That's what they said. The black security guard had a gun. You don't have body armor.
Mm.
Gus?
Rachel in New York? Yes, ma'am.
It just made me think of something. Usually if a black person walks into a white neighborhood, they get very suspicious. So we should act the same way.
Absolutely.
That's right. We had a Greek child said, that's right. That's right. I agree. That's right, Mama. I agree. Mm. I agree. Because that's us every day, all day long. Trayvon Martin, what are you doing in here? What? Bag of Skittles? What? That's us all day long, all over the world. Child Q, we just talked about that. What are you doing? Mm. What are you?
Yep.
Yeah. Security. That's us all over the world. So absolutely. What are you doing here, Dylan Roof? What are you doing here? Why are you here? And again, like I said, expecting that many of the non-white people that we're around, they're not going to think like this. They might even look at you a little bit crazy for thinking like, what is wrong? Oh, paranoid. You just hate white. See, that's what's wrong. That's why we have this problem right now. VGQ.
Mm.
That's why it's United Independent. Fine. You can stay here and hang out. No problem. And, I hope it goes well. And, it's all right. If I'm wrong in my suspicions, no problem. I hope that I am. Wouldn't have an argument with them either. I get other folks who, since the code, I think that is important. If people have a code specifically, I think she said if you're in an environment that is mostly black or maybe it's exclusively black and a white person appears, do people have a code about that? What do you do? Is it United Independent? Do you notify other folks? Like, do people, or are people starting to think about that now? Given what, and has anybody heard of Joseph G. Christopher prior to today? Henry in Chicago, much obliged for your patience, sir.
All right. Greetings, Gus. Greetings to callers, listeners, and guests on the program. I guess as far as code, I know, Gus, you mentioned this about not getting into confrontations with anybody, white, non-white, and I agree with that. But, you also said, too, that unless you're prepared to die, but, I always, when you say that, I always say, well, I'm a non-white black male in the system of white supremacy. And so I'm at an age right now where anytime I walk out of my house, my chances of dying are significantly great. And so, for me, I've always prayed that, every time I walk out of my house, I come home safely. But, also, too, I take precautions as well. I don't intentionally get into confrontations, but, living in the system of white supremacy as a black male, there's always a chance for you to die. But going to the Buffalo shooter, I saw a picture of him, and I'm not sure if this is, with media sensation and everything like that. They had a picture of this, white terrorist, and he was in his, I guess, armor, like a bulletproof vest, with a symbol of the black sun. Now, for those who know, it's an old Nazi symbol. People have this misconception that swastika was the only Nazi symbol, but the Nazis had many symbols. So with the symbol of the black sun, it's also part of the emblem of the Azov battalion that is in Ukraine. If you look at the emblem of the Azov battalion, the black sun symbol is in the background, along with the Wolfenstein symbol that is in front of this emblem. It's like two Z's inverted or something like that, but that's also a Nazi symbol as well. So I thought that was a pretty interesting connection with this, young white terrorist that that he has this symbol, and then our government is giving billions of dollars to Nazis over in Ukraine. But I was wondering if anybody has saw that picture, and I thought it was pretty. I thought that was pretty interesting. But that's all I had on me, my life.
Did you are you familiar with Joseph G. Christopher?
Not at all. And the thing is that I know people in the New York area probably would, but I'm still learning about stuff here in Chicago that that I'm trying to uncover. Now, I mean, like recently, just in the last 15 years, I started learning more about John Burge, and that happened in the early 80s. So I mean, it's not really like a rarity that we don't know these things. I mean, we're confused people in the system of white supremacy. This is the power they have over us because we don't have the information, so we're still learning.
Still learning. Gus T is no scholar on Seattle history or Washington State history, even though, that is white supremacy, racism right there. Ruby Ridge, we talked about that yesterday. Ruby Ridge, that is all this area, Pacific Northwest. I should be a scholar, but I have said that for years. Like, wherever you live at, Rachel in New York, Henry in Chicago, I'm in Seattle, just study your local history. Like that could be one right there. Every time you go out to the library, what have you, we go to the library, find at least one book. Local history. Let me learn something about local areas so I'll know a little bit more about racism here. That way they won't slip these Joseph G. Christophers past us and different Bubbly Creek in Chicago and all of this so that we'll be more informed. John Burge will be more informed. He was in Vietnam, right, with Joseph Christopher, had these white soldiers come back and then they want to be race soldiers. But yes.
Hey, Gus, can I add one more thing?
Let's hear it.
So you just mentioned about reading about your own history, and last year we read the book Packing Them In, which is based out of Chicago, which was a book written by a Chicago scholar, and I was the one that narrated it. And it was a lot of information that I did not know about Chicago. So and I've lived in Chicago for the entirety of my life. So, yeah, there you go. I mean, there was a lot of things that I learned out of that book.
Dr. Sylvia Hood Washington, she was with us for Earth Day last year, and he narrated. We read her great book. That was so relevant to COVID-19 and health into Bubbly Creek. Yes, try to learn something local, national, global level of white supremacy racism. You would be it really doesn't even matter where you happen to be. If you move someplace, go learn about that. But I mean, and that could be a great way if you have offspring to teach them about white supremacy racism. Just learning about where we are. Let's Bubbly Creek. We'll learn here all the rest of it. We talked about in that book, Packing Them In, or if you're in New York, now that is kind of grisly, but like I said, one of the victims of Joseph G. Christopher was a 14-year-old black child. So, yeah, some aspects of it are a little bit more grisly. But I mean, hey, if I had a teenager, you had better believe if we lived in Buffalo, oh yeah, my child is going to be A+. I know all about Joseph G. Christopher. That's why I don't go outside and act a fool. Chop me up and cut my heart out. I know we are on a plantation. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up. If you have commentary, questions, Andrew is with us, UK. Other folks who guest chatting, discussing what happened in Buffalo. Anybody heard of Joseph G. Christopher, anybody? Gus T., you are not the only one who does research. I was very aware of Joseph G. Christopher way before you said that.
Can I be heard?
Nick over the road, I think.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Gus. I just wanted to tell you about my experience in the Forest Service and EMS over 12 years. I always noticed that my white classmates or whatever and coworkers, they were never really comfortable around myself and the other so-called black people in the school and in the fire department or whatnot. And I don't know if you've ever stared at a dog while it was barking at you and then it'll stop. It'll kind of look away from you and keep you in their peripheral. That type of stuff right there, it's kind of almost natural to them. And the ones, if you're around a lot of black people, and when one of them come in, their level of comfortability around you, when I see that, to me, they've been trained specifically to not show that they're uncomfortable around you. And that, to me, is like a red flag. And also, I'm real big on reading faces. There's I think they call it physiognomy or something like that. There's a TV show called Lie to Me. It came out around 2009, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a show about reading faces. And they did 3 seasons of it. And every year, maybe once or twice, I'll binge it. Because I think you should be real keen on reading faces. And that includes, anybody's face, regardless of their race. And an example I want to give, I was getting some coffee pretty early one morning at a truck stop, and this guy walked in, and he wasn't a truck driver. He walked in from where the cars were, and he walked in, and he was like, "Hey, how many hours can you drive? Can you drive a day?" And to me, there's nothing that non-blacks know that black people know. They know everything that we know. So when I heard that question, I looked at him. I said, "Is somebody's life in danger?" And his expression had me walk away from the coffee section. And I just waited off to the side somewhere until he got through, with what he was doing over there. And I went back and got my coffee. Because his lack of an answer and his facial expression told me that he wasn't being cordial with me by asking me that question. And just check into reading faces and body language and that type of stuff when there's no non-black people around a bunch of black people. And I would probably go to somebody who's of authority around when there's a bunch of black people and specifically ask them, what are they doing here? Question what are they doing here and when are they leaving? Because I would want to know that. And if I'm not comfortable when they're around, I'll just make an exit. Like you said, I'll come back later and do whatever I need to do. Intellect and safety first is the message that I have for my people. And that's all I have to say for the moment. I'll mute myself.
Leave. Your feet still work. And that's United Independent. You don't have to have everybody walk out with you or what have you. You go ask your questions or what have you. You don't like the answers that you get, or you're still unsatisfied. These feet were made for walking. Exit. Y'all can let me know how all this played out later, hopefully safely, without my presence. The nonverbals, we talk about that in the context of workplace racism frequently, which is, super important there. But hey, for this setting as well, and that can encompass a whole lot of things. What does their face look like? What type of clothing do they have on? All of that. Where are they standing? Are they standing up? Are they sitting down? He said you can go ask questions if you don't feel comfortable with that. If they have security or, somebody's in charge or what have you, you can go have them, alert them, number one. That's why I said pay attention to what they're wearing and all that so you can give a good description. Then you can go have them ask questions, see what's going on. They can let you know, the results of whatever communication they have with the person. And the same thing, you don't like the information that you get? I will talk to you all later. Have fun. Be safe. But yeah, I think that is super logical. What we heard from Nick over the road, all the folks thus far, just in terms of trying to talk about being safe when we are in an environment where they're mostly black people, maybe all black people. Why and what type of event is happening as well? I think that's also important. Are we at a church? Are we outside at maybe a birthday party for somebody? Or what's going on where this person, has just strolled up? They want to hang out or they're observing. And even if we had a group, let's say we were out, because there have been confrontations at so many different settings. Let's say if you're out like at a restaurant or an establishment like that, I might even tell everybody up front, hey, it's been a tumultuous, couple years. If anything happens, if we're out in public, we're not at a private residence or what have you, anything happens, a white person, group of white people come up and this looks unsafe, we're leaving. Yeah, it's a disappointment. Yeah, it's a bummer. And we came all the way out here to the beach or whatever. Anything looks like, whoa, what's going on? We're leaving. We can rendezvous at, wherever, get on the phones, text, we'll pick out, if that means we relocate or we do whatever. But already have that discussion, especially if you have children, already have that so that can be easy. If anything does happen, we've already discussed this. This can be a quick vacate. And again, vacate without a whole lot of lip, not going back and forth with a total stranger in these type of incidents if, this is out of a public type setting thing. Let's see. Andrew, you've been right there with us. Do you have any thoughts in terms of a code if you're in an environment that's all black people or mostly black people and a white person stumbles into the setting?
Stumbles. I was listening because I think it's very interesting. And you see, the reason why it's needed, here's the problem, Gus, and I'm glad the sister brought it up. Here's the problem. It's not just an issue for African Americans. It's an issue for Africans worldwide. You see, the problem that we have, for some weird reason, and I don't quite know what it is, we are not afraid of white people. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that many of us see white people as being harmless and or see white people as being the savior, our savior. So when you go to West Africa, when you go I think anywhere on the African continent, right? When you go into African communities, whether these African communities are in America, in the Americas, North or South, or African communities anywhere in Europe, white people are not seen as being, we don't see them as being suspicious. You may or may not know, or the sister may or may not know, that on the African continent, basically it's full of white pedophiles from America and from Europe, crawling and I use the word crawling, all over the African continent. And, Africans are none the wiser with these white men basically going around feeling up black children in Africa. That's what's going on. So it does not surprise me that, you got this young little white racist who basically can walk anywhere, I think, in an African American community. And no one, people are not wondering, Africans where you are simply not wondering, what's this little white kid doing around there? Well, what's he here for? What's he here for? So he's not challenged. He's not asked what he's doing there. In fact, we're probably happy to have him walking around in our area. When we should think the opposite. We should literally watch him because of the history of white men in black areas worldwide. You know, this is just I'm not making this up. This is just a fact. So, and, this is not to say that every white person in the black area is there to basically kill, maim, or feel up black children. That's not what I'm saying. However, there is a history of it, right? If we're honest, there just is. There's just a history of it. There's histories of shootings, there's histories of paedophilia, there's histories of all of these things. So there needs to be something, there needs to be something that, as far as I'm concerned, we have to be very mindful of when we see these people in our areas, and the problem is when we watch mainstream white media, we believe that we black people, African heritage people, are the number one predators, when that's just not, that doesn't bear itself out in reality. In reality, we're not the number one predators. White people, white men are the number one predators when it comes to the shooting, maiming, and sexual attacks on black bodies. That's the statistical truth, right? So therefore, we have to protect ourselves. We have to protect our children specifically, and we have to do everything that we can do to do that. That protection, as far as I'm concerned, starts in black families, and the unpalatable bit is that we have to stay together in terms of black marriages in order to make sure that our children and our communities are protected. That's a whole nother long discussion, but that is how you protect your communities, basically. Black families have to stay, black men and women have to stay together to make sure that the black woman and the black children are protected. Black men have to be allowed to stay in the house in order to manufacture protection. And then there has to be conversations around race and racism inside the house and how best to protect our children. And that goes to we have to extend that to what happens at schools as well, and the lack of protection through social services and all the rest of those bits. Because basically you got the attack on children at school, as we know. And that's just not child Q. That happens in your part of the world as well. So protection needs to start in the house. Those conversations then be extended out of the house, out into the local community. Whatever protection is not happening in the house, it can't happen in the local community. It's got to start at home first and then be extended out. That's what's got to happen. So it's got to start in the family as well. It's got to start there. So we need to stay together in order to extend that protection out of the house into the local community and further afield, and into local politics as well. Basically, we've got to protect, we've got to cement and protect and control our areas and control local law. So sorry to move into solutions, but but it's but we've got the same problem in my part of the world, in London, in the UK. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, in Brixton, I used to work in Brixton, which used to be a black area before gentrification. And you don't even know, but then you would have a whole heap of, I'm going to say foreigners. It's a strange word to use in the UK, but understand Brixton used to be a black area. Foreigners, there'd be a foreign march right down Brixton High Street, where there's a whole heap of people that don't live in Brixton. They just descend on our area, They couldn't do that in an Asian area. Do you know what I mean? Because the local MP, the local member of parliament, is Asian, and he's not going to make it happen. It's not going to happen in the area, but it would happen in our area because we don't control local politics. It's not, we're not we haven't cemented, and we don't control. Like, if you control your area, you control who comes in to your area, pretty much, and that is absent from us, for the reasons that I've just laid out. I'll be quiet.
Context of white supremacy. That is the global system. Black people not having control, to regulate who's going to be in our areas and what have you. That's why Mr. Fuller says we don't have communities, because we do not have the ability to secure and keep each other safe. You're not going to be around here. What are you doing in here? Payton Gendron, get on out of here. He wouldn't, even be there. In fact, they even said the area where he went to go and shoot and maim all these black people, including, and in fact, they should be calling this guy a cop killer. They said Mr. Salter, Aaron Salter, was 30 years working on the police department. Why isn't that a cop killer? He's working as a security guard. Anywho, but they said, in addition to this Tops being a supermarket where mostly black patrons went to get their groceries and what have you, they said that this is an area that's a so-called food desert, where they say, hey, we don't have, the black people that live here don't have many options for their grocery shopping needs. Nutritional apartheid, they have other terms for it, but having very limited access to get groceries anyway. And then you have this happen on your way to go get your Cheetos. That's what I mean about you don't have communities anyway. Whether it's we got an armed white 18-year-old or a whole store filled with high fructose corn syrup and baby formula. Well, I guess no baby formula now, but usually baby formula and high fructose corn syrup and Cheetos and processed foods and Lunchables, whole lot of stuff to kill you. And if that, either we do it that way and it takes 60 years and you have a really low quality of life, or we can just do it all in one shebang.
Serious. Yep.
Our caller in Florida, they said Trayvon Martin, he had tea and Skittles. Same thing. Processed foods, high fructose corn syrup. Either way. Long way, short way. You take your pick. Caller in Florida, did you have commentary, questions? Or I guess you're kind of far away, but I'll ask anyway. Did you know about Joseph G. Christopher, or have heard him mentioned, white serial killer in Buffalo, New York, who was killing black males?
No, sir. You can add me to the list. I'm uninformed about that as well.
Still learning. All still learning. Proceed.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Greetings to Gus, the host, the listeners, and callers. I'm still learning also on the Buffalo, the white supremacy I was practiced. They're calling it, I guess, the mass shooting and many things. I plan on watching some news reports on that, but I do agree with the United Independent for a situation like that. If a white person is entering an environment where there's a majority black population, I can also see where black people would take an issue or make issue with you if you try to ask, like, hey, what is this person doing here? This white person doing here? I can definitely see how it would be an individual thing. As far as who the black people that I've been around. Now for the shooting, it's like, man, how they connected it to Dylan Roof, or they said he was inspired by Dylan Roof. I would want to, I guess, hear the manifesto that the person wrote. I think that's what may be a part of the news. But yeah, I was just calling in to learn more about the details on that news event. And as far as also another thing about the code, like just me working where I'm working at now, like I'm about to hit my 11 years. And then like, if it wasn't for this program and the people that call in and other platforms, like it's no telling where I would be right now. Like, not to really get off of the subject, but one of the last conversations I had with my dad, he said he was raised to be racist. I didn't understand what that meant, you know, and he was with a white woman, you know what I mean? So, and I know he definitely didn't want to really be talking about racism and everything. So I appreciate this program, people that call in, and I just long to just keep learning about this to help solve that problem. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And learn about the local history, national and global. And that's all I pretty much have to share. Thanks for allowing me to speak.
Congratulations, 11 years. That is awesome. Counter-racist logic can be, helpful with longevity in some cases, help minimize some of those problems, and be preemptive, proactive in some cases to keep things from becoming a problem way in advance. So, congrats. Keep up the good work. Keep learning, and excellent notes. I think that too, taking lots of notes, because he normally has great reports for workplace racism, just being really detailed and documenting things, having a reputation for documenting things. Like, that is also a great way help with that longevity and minimizing problems in the workplace. But yet the confusion is so why even that, because I would hope at least, I feel like that's one of the reasons, I appreciate, Mr. Fuller, Dr. Welsing, Grandcester, Dr. Cambon, folks like that who, victims, but they've been studying this problem for some time, and they will remember incidents like that, Joseph G. Christopher and what have you, so that you can put things in a greater context. You can see the big picture. And what I said too about confusion, that hey, if you got black people, and that's widespread. Michael Jordan said the same thing. He said he grew, and he said, well, it's not he said, it's fact. He was raised Wilmington, North Carolina. And he said, yeah, the experience that I had, I basically was racist against white people. Like, what? And this is in context of him saying a white girl called me a nigger. And after that, I had so many of these type of incidents that I was just racist against all white people. What? What? Even if he had said he hated all white people, all right, that's reasonable. If I was called nigger, and he could have been treated like a prince. I was raised in Wilmington, North Carolina. He was born in my memory, unless it's bad, I think he was born in 1963, February 1963, Mike Jordan. So that's 65 years after. They didn't kill 10 black people in Wilmington, North Carolina. They don't even know how many black people that they killed and purged from Wilmington, North Carolina. That's not even counting all the property that was stolen. That alone would be reason to, man, I am not feeling these white people. And that would be another one. Just like with this, we have folks who, all of us, me too, talking about not knowing local history and all that. Dad, I didn't even know. Now, does Michael Jordan at that time, and even or now, does he know about that Wilmington purge that happened in his hometown? That also just shows the generational confusion. Mr. Fuller even talked about that, where we don't really get to build on information. It's like you have to start from scratch, from every generation, in terms of thinking about processing racism, white supremacy, what it is, with a problem that is centuries old. You don't even get to build on information to get closer to a solution. All of that is by design as well. But any other comments? Comments on the code? Even the abortion aspect I thought was significant, because I was very sure, and that was a language thing too, because I think I was saying abortion, and Andrew had to catch it, come back and say, oh, you mean Roe versus Wade? Oh, yes, they've been talking about that every day. I'm of course, white women, yes. White genetic annihilation, yes, every day. Any other folks' comments here? They wanted to make sure they get in.
Can I say a little bit more about Roe versus Wade, Gus?
Andrew in the UK, let's hear it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because you see, what I'm hoping is that black people, particularly black women, don't follow white women down that road. Because I think the sister who's on the call said earlier on that she said that abortion is a big killer of black life, black babies, and I totally agree. You see, so we shouldn't really be following these people in that. We shouldn't be following that, because I know that that whole Roe versus Wade thing has got links to Planned Parenthood, and I know from what I've read, those Planned Parenthood, they operate in black areas, basically, not only in the States, by the way, but also in the UK. So I think they call it something else, but basically it's Planned Parenthood. So that whole area, we, as far as I'm concerned, we just want to avoid. What we want to be doing is building black families, or doing our best to build black families. That whole area of Roe versus Wade, and I think that's linked to, is linked to other issues around. I know in the States around how, black families, have been destroyed and all the rest of it. Through government assistance and all this kind of thing. Can't remember the report that was I think you call it the Morningham report. I'm probably saying that incorrectly. So all of that basically has been put together really to destroy black families, as far as I'm concerned, in America. And this country where I'm in, my part of the world, has mirrored it in various ways. In the UK, you may or may not know this, Gus, but going back to when I was a child, a known way for poor black girls in council estates, you guys call them projects, to get somewhere to live, we call them a flat, a council flat, has been basically just to get pregnant, and that way you get a council flat. It's, people joke and have joked and laughed about it over the years, but basically it's true. So you get young girls knew at that time where I grew up, if they can get pregnant, they could get somewhere to live. They could get a flat off the local council. But the problem is their child just grows up on a council estate, and so you've got you just got generational deprivation and all the rest of those things, and young black girls that are trapped in the system, and their partner, if you like, their man, their husband, becomes the state. To the point where, if they meet a young man, he can't be, they can't get together, because then she'll lose benefits. And so that's, I know that's mirrored in the States. So we have to think differently. We have to think generationally. We have to think further than all of those things. We have to train our children to think further than all of that. That short-term mindset. We have to move our people from that short-term mindset to a long-term mindset. As far as I'm concerned, a generational mindset, which means 200 years. A generational mindset is 4 generations, to your great-grandchildren. So that's opposite so that whole mindset is opposite to an abortion mindset. That's what I'm trying to say, when you compare the two.
Context of white supremacy. Rachel in New York, you came in talking about this issue. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I don't have anything additional to add. I'm still thinking about the code that I'm going to form. As for the abortion, I still stand that it's the number one killer of black babies. And that's it.
Definitely. Lots to discuss before hitting the bedroom. Can't emphasize that enough. Dr. Welsing talked about that enough. Being extraordinarily responsible with our genitals, racism, white supremacy. when they're not outright stealing our genitals and lives, they do a lot of conditioning us to be totally reckless with our genitals, which suits just what Andrew said about all the pedophiles, male and female child rapists. That suits their environment to have a lot of people who are confused about and or reckless with Area 8 sexual activity. Did any of the other folks commentary, suggestions that they wanted to make sure that they got in? Everybody satisfied, seems like. Situation in Buffalo ended up dominating, which I guess, at least all the reports that I've seen, that has been the case worldwide, where everyone is talking about the situation in Buffalo. Incorrectly, I have seen some mention of racism. I think Andrew in the UK said it was using different terms, not so much terrorism, not white supremacy, but other terms. Also, I've seen a lot of focus where it was social media. You all, radicalized this fella and got Payton, Gendron, however you say his last name. You all got him radicalized and motivated him to do this, and social media companies need to be held accountable. And then gun control, which is pretty common when they have these sort of incidents. I played that segment, Dr. Welsing saying, hey, you do not understand gun control or the lack thereof if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, and especially this guy's conduct. I think retired firefighter in Florida was saying yesterday that he had nigger carved in the rifle. Henry in Chicago was telling us about the symbolism. He had the black sun. I didn't even see that. I didn't even know that part of it. But allegedly, I guess there's a picture where he's got this emblem, Nazi emblem, also that folks can see, like 18 years old. 18 years. He couldn't even vote for Trump. They can't even put this off. Oh man, these old white people and all that. What sort of grievances do you have at 18 against the niggers? These aren't even niggers like in his neighborhood that did something to him. These are niggers that are way far away. He said hundreds of miles he had to drive. Let me go get the title again. Man, the book, I found that while we were live on air. I knew about the event in terms of Greg Christopher. I knew about that event. I just didn't know that there was actually a book that details all of this. That will be this coming Thursday, right on schedule that we just finished Dear Senator. As I said, I was all ready to roll with All God's Children, which is about the same subject matter. That is a book that is about all of the history of white terrorist violence in South Carolina and how that spreads through generations and even to other black people, black children. And then it goes into Willie Bosket. That's like the second half of the book. Great book. Would have been a beautiful sequel, but with everything in Buffalo and then so many people, even Gus T, I'm not like an expert on all of this. Our next book, Absolute Madness, a true story of a serial killer, race, and a divided city. And I think there's even a Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton mentioned in this text. Like, I could not be more excited. Like, right on time. Terrible subject matter, but reading is more important than watching television. Local, national, global history. Like, so super important. We did our Global Sunday Talk. Would have been great to hear from some other folks on this, because this could end up being like Dylan Storm Roof, an event, that they'll be talking about for as long as white supremacy, racism exists. So, but hopefully we'll get a chance with him later, if possible. At minimum, we will be here on Tuesday. White guest Gerald Van Dusen will be talking about his book, The Race Riots in Detroit. I'm sure we'll have more to say about the Buffalo incident on Tuesday as well. And then the book club Thursday. Cannot wait. Cannot wait. Much obliged for hanging out, sharing some of your time and expertise with us, Andrew, as well as all of the folks who dialed in stateside, Henry in Chicago, Rachel in New York, Nick over the road, our caller in Florida. Hope it was a constructive investment of your, I guess, Sunday evening, afternoon, wherever you happen to be at. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. You never know. Might be you pulling into the supermarket or the library or whatever it is, and Mr. Gendron, we talked about, there was a white female, a 16-year-old, even that, like paying attention to the ages now. Mr. Christopher, Gerald Christopher, Joseph, that was it, Joseph Christopher, he was 25. They said Payton Gendron, 18. Nick over the road, he reminded us yesterday the case of the white female in Georgia. She was going to go shoot up the black church. She was 16. Do they seem like they're ignorant about racism? I keep hearing that it's the Donald Trumps, Once Donald Trump, Donald Sterling, all these old fogey white dudes, and Paula Deen, even some of these old fogey white women, once they die out, Queen Elizabeth, they'll be great, man. Once we get rid of these, really? Dylan Storm Roof, I believe at the time, 21. Might even been a little bit younger than that, but I mean, he was not older than 21 way back in 2015. What does it mean to be white? I think the way we normally say it is racist man, racist woman, racist child. They have a super understanding of white supremacy racism. We non-white people still learning. In addition to being sober, when you're out and about, like, maybe be thinking about that code, like, whoa, am I in an environment with a lot of black people? Let me be really vigilant about what's happening here. Anyone that's white pops up, whoa, I'm vigilant anyway, because I mean, hey, but I mean, someone classified as white is here? What is he doing? What is she wearing? Does this person look like they got a bulge? Gun? What's their disposition? All of that. Anything strikes you as suspicious, time to go. You don't need to have an argument or a discussion with any non-white people about this if they want to stay. Oh, you're just a racist. You are so paranoid. You got all that hate in your heart. Brother, I'm on praise. Yeah, VGQ, Victims Guaranteed Qualified. Although I'm sure after today, at least for a few days, there will be many more non-white people might be receptive to reconsidering. Definitely make sure you let them know. Did you hear about that book? Absolute Madness. Race. A true story of a serious, should say white serial killer. Race and a city divided. Book Club Thursday. Tell them to tune in. If you're in a vehicle, you're sober, you're buckled up, you're not on a cell phone, we just got to be alert. Very dangerous times that we are in. All of that said, Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy. We ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. No throwaway children. That right there. Hey, we are not going to hop in this bed and have fun for a little while just so that we can go have an abortion. We're not doing that. We're not hopping in this bed and having fun for a little while just for a child Q either. We are going to be super serious about the production of black offspring. And if we're not into all that, we don't want to be responsible. Hey, I agree with Gus. Being a black parent is the hardest job in the known universe. No problem. That just means we are not reckless with the production of offspring. And then you can fool around and have all the fun you want. No offspring and none of that black children in foster care, black children being aborted, black children being abused all over the world, as Andrew pointed out. Not being reckless with sexual intercourse, sexual activity is an enormous component of replacing white supremacy with justice. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.